All right, welcome. Today we're going to do a quick crash course on the big forces that basically run our world. We're talking about everything from, the price of your coffee to the health of the entire global economy. So let's just dive right in. Have you ever really stopped to think about what sets the price for, well, everything? Economists have this famous, kind of mysterious term for it, the invisible hand. So what on earth is this thing, and how does it work? Okay, so to really get a grip on this invisible hand, you've got to start with the two most powerful, most fundamental forces in all of economics. And don't worry, we're going to make it super simple. Let's just talk about something we all know and love, a cup of coffee. First up, we've got demand. And honestly, this is something you already know. It's totally intuitive, right? I mean, if your go-to latte suddenly shot up to $10, you'd probably think twice about buying it. But what if it went on sale for just $1? You might grab one every single day. That's it. That's the law of demand. When the price drops, the number of people who want to buy it goes up. Then you've got the other side of the coin, supply. Now let's switch gears. Put yourself in the shoes of the coffee shop owner. If you can sell those lattes for a really high price, you're going to be pretty motivated to crank them out, right? Sell as many as possible. But if the price tanks, maybe not so much. And that's the law of supply. The higher the price, the more that producers want to sell. Okay, so here's where the magic happens. It's when these two forces, supply and demand, meet. The market, all on its own, finds this perfect little sweet spot. It's called the equilibrium price. And it's the price where the number of lattes people want to buy is exactly the same as the number of lattes shops want to sell. This balancing act, with nobody directing it, that's the invisible hand in action. And here's why that's so important. In a perfect world, that equilibrium point is the single most efficient outcome possible. It creates the most value, what economists call economic surplus, for everybody. The coffee drinkers are happy, the coffee sellers are happy, it's a win-win. But the real world isn't always perfect, is it? Sometimes that invisible hand can get a little shaky, a little clumsy. So let's look at what happens when the system has a glitch. These are what economists call market failures. So the textbook ideal is something called perfect competition. You've got tons and tons of different sellers all competing with each other. It forces them to be efficient and just accept whatever the market price is. They're price takers. But what if you have the complete opposite? What if there's only one seller for a product? That's a monopoly, and they're not a price taker anymore. No, they become a price maker, and that changes the entire game. See, a monopoly can jack up prices and produce less stuff than people actually want. This creates something called deadweight loss. It's a fancy term, but all it means is that there's potential value that just vanishes. It's lost to everybody. It's just pure inefficiency that doesn't benefit anyone. Not really. It's a classic market failure. Okay, here's another kind of glitch. Externalities. Let's start with a negative one. Think of it as a hidden cost. So imagine a factory is making, widgets. But in the process, it's dumping pollution into a nearby river. The price you pay for that widget, it doesn't factor in the cost of cleaning up that river. That cost gets pushed onto the whole community who had nothing to do with the transaction. So because that full cost, the pollution cost, isn't baked into the price, the signal the market gets is just wrong. And what's the result? Well, the free market, when it's left all alone, ends up making way too much of the things with these nasty side effects, like pollution. But hey, it's not all bad news. Externalities can also be positive. Think about getting a flu shot. You get the shot, you're protected. That's great for you. But you're also helping protect your family, your coworkers, everyone around you, because you're less likely to spread the virus. The thing is, the price you pay for the shot only reflects your benefit, not that huge benefit to the entire community. And because the market isn't really seeing those extra social benefits, it doesn't create enough of an incentive. So what happens? The market ends up producing too little of these really good things, like vaccinations, or even education, that have all these positive spillover effects. So if the invisible hand is fumbling the ball, what do we do? Well, this is usually where governments step in. And the idea isn't to replace the market entirely, but more to, give that invisible hand a little nudge to get it back on track. Let's go back to that polluting factory. How do you fix it? Well, a common solution is for the government to step in and say, okay, for every unit you produce, you have to pay a tax that's equal to the cost of the pollution damage. This forces the factory to internalize that cost. Suddenly, their private cost matches the true social cost. And what happens? The price now reflects the real damage, and the market, on its own, adjusts and produces less. Pretty smart, right? And for something good, like vaccinations, you just flip the logic. Instead of a tax, the government can offer a subsidy. It's basically a reverse tax. It lowers the price for you. This helps your personal benefit line up with the bigger social benefit, which encourages a lot more people to get the shot. And that pushes us closer to the number of vaccinations that's actually best for everybody. Okay, so we've been talking about individual markets, coffee and factories. But now let's zoom way, way out. How do we take the temperature of an entire country's economy? What's the big headline number that everyone, from politicians to news anchors, is always talking about? Well, that number is gross domestic product, or GDP. And what it is, really, is just the total market value of all the finished stuff, every car, every coffee, every haircut, that a country produces in a given year. It's kind of like the economy's final report card. And let me tell you, these numbers are just huge. For a big economy, you're talking about trillions, that's trillions with a T, of dollars. It's a mind-boggling amount of activity. So the big question is, what actually makes up that giant number? Well, you can basically break GDP down into 4 main engines. The biggest one, by a long shot, is consumption. That's you, me, all of us, buying stuff. Next up is investment, which is mostly spending by businesses. Then you've got government spending on things like roads and defense. And that last little slice, net exports, is just our exports minus our imports. For many countries, that's a negative number, which means we buy more from the world than we sell to it. So a bigger GDP number means the economy is healthier, right? End of story? Well, not so fast. It's actually a bit more complicated than that. That big headline number can sometimes hide what's really going on. You've got to dig a little deeper. And this gets us to a really important distinction: nominal GDP versus real GDP. See, nominal GDP can go up just because prices went up, inflation. It looks like growth, but it isn't. Real GDP is the one you want to watch. It's adjusted for inflation, so it tells you if we're actually producing more stuff. That's what real growth is all about. But even real GDP isn't the whole story. It's got some major blind spots. Think about all the valuable work that happens at home, right? Taking care of kids, cooking meals. It's incredibly valuable, but because no money changes hands, GDP counts it as 0. It also doesn't subtract for things like environmental damage, and it says absolutely nothing about how fairly everything is distributed, or, if we're actually happy. It's just not designed to measure those things. And that really leaves us with a big final question to think about. Look, GDP is an absolutely essential tool. It's great for measuring our economic output. But as we've just seen, an economy and a society is about so much more than just the numbers. So, while GDP is busy measuring the value of everything we produce, it's always worth asking, does it measure what we truly value?